This story is titled, My Girlfriend Admitted She Cheated. I Needed a Real Man. She smirked. My friends took her side, so I gave her and her gold-digging BFF what they deserved. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Alright dudes, buckle up because this is going to be a long one. Shit hit the fan in my life and I need to vent somewhere. Figured Reddit's the place since my so-called friends turned out to be backstabbing assholes. Whatever. So I'm Ren, 29 male, and until last month I thought I had life pretty much figured out. Decent job in software dev. Nothing spectacular, just enough to pay the bills and fund my soccer addiction. A fiance I was crazy about, and season tickets to my favorite team. Life was good, you know? Soccer's been my thing since I was a kid. I'm talking obsessed. Like my apartment looks like a soccer museum threw up in it, lol. Scarves on every wall, signed jerseys and frames, those little collectible player figures that cost way too much. The works. I even turned an old stadium seat into my coffee table. Yeah, call me a man-child. I've heard it before. Anyways, I met a girl, I'll call her Lex, at a sports bar about 3 years back. Liverpool versus Manchester United, one of the biggest matches of the season. I noticed her right away. Hot blonde in a Liverpool jersey who seemed to actually know what was happening in the game. Not gonna lie, that was like an instant aphrodisiac for me. She could name the entire starting lineup and their positions. I was in love faster than a Salah counterattack. We hit it off immediately. Exchanged numbers, started dating, the usual. Every match day, she'd be right there with me, cheering and cursing at the ref. For our first anniversary, she got me this signed Mbappe jersey that must have cost a fortune. I nearly cried, not gonna lie. After a year and a half, I proposed. She said yes. Everything seemed perfect. Our apartment became this shrine to soccer. Match schedules on the fridge. Team scarves hanging everywhere. Framed tickets from games we'd been to together. Sometimes she'd roll her eyes when I'd go on hour-long rants about VAR decisions or transfer rumors. But I figured that was normal. Nobody's 100% into everything their partner likes, right? Oh, and quick background on Lex. She worked at this fancy marketing agency downtown. Good money, climbing that corporate ladder like a boss. Her boss, Dex, was this stereotypical exec type. Silver fox, designer suits, Maserati, the whole package. He'd show up at company events and Lex would get all professional and giggly around him. I never thought much of it. Figured it was just office politics and networking stuff. It's just networking, babe, she'd say, whenever I mentioned how much time she spent talking to him at parties. And like the absolute dumbass I am, I believed her. So about a month ago, Lex goes on this work trip to Dubai. All expenses paid, business class flights, 5-star hotels, the whole shebang. Her Instagram was flooding with poolside meetings and camel rides in the desert with the marketing team. Meanwhile, I'm back home, watching Champions League matches alone and texting her about the insane goals she was missing. Her responses got shorter and less enthusiastic every day. The first few days I'd get, wish you were here, and miss you. By the end, it was just cool and nice to my excited match updates. Some messages were just left unread. When she got back, something felt off. The Liverpool jersey she used to wear to bed disappeared from rotation. The matches we'd planned to watch together suddenly conflicted with catching up on work. When I suggested having people over for the upcoming derby match, she looked at me like I'd suggested hosting a cockroach racing tournament in our living room. Then came the night everything fell apart. We were at this overpriced sushi place downtown, her pick. I was actually excited because they had TVs, and there was an important World Cup qualifier on. As the hostess started leading us to a table, Lex stopped her. Can we sit somewhere else? She asked, pointing away from the screens. I can't handle another night of soccer. I nearly choked on my own spit. Another night? But you love soccer. You've always loved soccer. The look she gave me. Fuck. I'll never forget it. It was like watching someone take off a mask they'd been wearing for years. Ren, I've literally never cared about soccer. Not once in my entire life. I just sat there, chopsticks frozen halfway to my mouth, while my brain tried to process what she'd just said. The waiter awkwardly backed away, probably thinking he was witnessing a breakup. He wasn't wrong. What do you mean you've never cared? What about the Liverpool jersey when we met? The player stats? The matches we've watched together? She sighed like I was some annoying kid she had to explain basic math to. I've been pretending to like soccer for 3 years, she said, sipping her sake. 3 fucking years. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. But why? Zoe coached me, she said casually, like this wasn't completely destroying my reality. She thought you were hot but knew you only dated soccer fans. So she gave me a crash course. Player names, basic rules, enough to fool you. Zoe. Her best friend? The same Zoe who'd helped plan our engagement party. The one who occasionally joined us for matches and seemed genuinely into the sport. Another faker. So, everything, all of it, was just, look, Lex cut me off, clearly impatient with my slowness to catch on. I thought you'd grow out of it, okay? Most guys have phases. Car phases. Guitar phases. I figured the soccer obsession would fade, and you'd start focusing on, actual grown-up priorities. That stung. Like what? I managed to ask. Like career advancement? Financial stability? A house that doesn't look like a teenage boy's bedroom? Double sting. In Dubai, she continued, twirling her chopsticks like this was a totally normal dinner conversation. I realized something. Life's too short to pretend, and I want a man who wants more from life than watching sweaty guys kick a ball around a field. I sat there trying to process while the TV behind me erupted with cheers from the match I was missing. The irony wasn't lost on me. Is there someone else? I finally asked, already knowing the answer. Her silence told me everything. It's Dex, isn't it? She smiled. Not a guilty smile. A relieved one. He gets me, she said, eyes actually lighting up. He has ambition, drive, a penthouse, a yacht. I couldn't believe what I'm hearing. And a wife, I added. Lex rolled her eyes like I'd pointed out some minor inconvenience. They're practically separated. And anyway, he says I inspire him, that I have untapped potential he wants to help develop. I bet that's not all he wanted to tap. But I didn't say that. Instead, I just sat there feeling like an absolute fool. So all this time, I said slowly, you were just, what? Tolerating me until something better came along? Don't be dramatic, Ren. We had fun, but I'm 27. It's time to level up. Level up. Like I was some tutorial mission she'd completed before moving on to the real game. Anything else you've been lying about? I asked, surprised at how steady my voice was. She actually had to think about it. Like there were so many lies she needed to sort through them. Well, I never liked your mother, she offered. Like she was doing me a favor with her honesty. And that trip to the ER last year when you got injured playing soccer? I wasn't stuck in traffic. I was having drinks with Dex. Jesus Christ. I dislocated my shoulder and she couldn't be bothered to come to the hospital because she was busy flirting with her boss. I didn't say anything, just glared at her. Look, Ren, this is for the best. You can go find some soccer-obsessed girl who will appreciate your enthusiasm, and I can move on to someone who matches my ambitions. That's when the final piece clicked. Is that why you pushed me to stay at my dead-end job? Why you always discouraged me from applying to better positions? So I'd stay exactly where I was while you leveled up? Her expression told me everything. You're comfortable where you are, she said dismissively. Not everyone needs to climb the corporate ladder. The fucking audacity. She'd actively sabotaged my career to make herself feel better about cheating. I think we're done here, I said, throwing some cash on the table for my half of the bill. I wasn't about to pay for her overpriced sushi after this confession. Don't be like that, she said, suddenly concerned about appearances. We can be adults about this. Adults. You've been lying to me for 3 years, cheating on me, and apparently sabotaging my career. Which part of that is adult behavior? She glanced around, noticing people at nearby tables starting to stare. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene? That's rich coming from someone who's been putting on a one-woman show for 3 fucking years. I stood up, surprisingly steady, considering how much sake I'd downed to cope with this conversation. Enjoy your life with Dex, I said. Hope his wife doesn't mind too much. I walked out, ignoring her calling my name. My phone was already blowing up with texts from our mutual friends, all suddenly concerned about my reaction to the news. When I got home that night, they'd apparently been sitting on for weeks cleared out half her stuff. There was a note on the fridge saying she'd be back for the rest later, and that she hoped we could remain friends. Friends? After this shit show. The absolute delusion. What really got me, though? She'd taken the signed Mbappé jersey, the one that cost me 3 months' salary, the one she apparently never gave a shit about except for its monetary value. I turned on the match highlights and realized I couldn't remember a single thing that had happened in the game I'd just watched at the restaurant. My brain was too busy replaying the last 3 years, looking for signs I'd missed. About 2 days after that, it hit me. I'd spent 3 years with someone who was fundamentally disgusted by my passion. Someone who saw my excitement as childish. Someone who was just waiting for a better offer. And now she was living it up with Dex the Wonder exec, probably laughing about how she'd fooled the soccer idiot for years. Something snapped. Not in a I'm gonna go full John Wick way, more like a screw this, time for a montage moment. First thing I did was clean my apartment. Then I hit the gym. Not because I wanted to get jacked to impress Lex, fuck that, but because I needed somewhere to direct my rage that wouldn't result in property damage or restraining orders. First day back was brutal. I hadn't worked out properly in months and nearly puked after 10 minutes on the treadmill. But it felt good to focus on something physical instead of replaying her betrayal in my head for the millionth time. The next big step was work. See, I'd been coasting at my software dev job for years. It wasn't bad. Decent pay, okay benefits, easy workload. But I wasn't growing. Turns out, I'd been sitting on a job offer from our competitor for weeks. Better pay, better position, chance to work on projects I actually cared about. I'd been hesitating because Lex said changing jobs would be destabilizing for our future plans. Our future plans. Hilarious in retrospect. I called my boss the next morning. Hey Vince, that position still open at Nexus Tech? There was a pause. Yeah, but I thought you weren't interested. Changed my mind. I'll take it. Just like that? What about what you said about stability and... That was someone else talking through me, I said. I want the job. 2 weeks later, I was starting fresh at a company that actually valued innovation. My salary jumped by 30%, and I had actual responsibility instead of just debugging other people's code all day. Then came the apartment situation. Turned out our lease was almost up anyway. Instead of renewing, I found this sleek high-rise downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Walking distance to the stadium. It cost more, but with my new salary, I could swing it. The new place had zero memories of Lex. No arguments about soccer posters being immature. No compromising on the aesthetic. I decorated it exactly how I wanted. Framed vintage jerseys on the walls, proper display cases for my collectibles, and a massive TV perfectly positioned for match viewing. The new job came with a signing bonus that made my eyes water. After putting most of it away like a responsible adult, something Lex never thought I could be, I treated myself to the car I'd always wanted. A matte black Audi RS7. Not quite Dex's Maserati, but unlike his, mine wasn't compensating for a failing marriage and midlife crisis. That car, man. First time I got behind the wheel, windows down, system blasting, I actually felt okay. Not great yet, but okay. Like maybe my life wasn't over just because some manipulative woman had decided I wasn't part of her level up plan. The funny thing about making positive changes? They start to compound. I was sleeping better because of the gym. Sleeping better meant more energy for work. Doing well at work boosted my confidence. Higher confidence made me more social. It wasn't an overnight transformation. I still had nights where I'd stare at the ceiling wondering how I could have been so blind. But slowly, things improved. 6 months flew by. New job was crushing it. I'd already been promoted to team lead. New apartment had become home. New car turned heads. I'd even started dating casually. Nothing serious. Just enjoying the company of women who were upfront about who they were and what they wanted. I'd also reconnected with my actual friends. Guys from my rec soccer league who'd always been cool, but I'd neglected because Lex thought they were not ambitious enough. Translation: they didn't have rich bosses she could upgrade to. The funny thing about success? It travels fast, especially in the social media age. I wasn't posting much, just occasional updates. The view from my apartment, a selfie at the stadium and the premium seats my new salary could afford. The car with the caption, "New Beginnings." Nothing directly aimed at Lex or her crowd, but enough to show I wasn't curled up in a ball crying. Then came a text from Zoe. Wow, someone's doing well. Coffee sometime? Would love to catch up. Interesting timing, Zoe. Very interesting indeed. I'd been ignoring her messages for months. After that night at the sushi place, she'd sent dozens of texts. Lex was wrong to do that to you. I never knew it went that far with Dex. You deserve better. All bullshit, of course. She'd been the architect of the whole deception, coaching Lex on how to manipulate me from day one. But suddenly, now that I appeared to be doing well, she was interested in catching up? My first instinct was to tell her to go fuck herself. That would have been the healthy response. But something stopped me. Call it pettiness, call it the desire for closure, whatever. I was curious about what she was up to. So I agreed to meet, more out of curiosity than anything else. The cafe she suggested happened to be right next to the dealership where I'd bought my car. Subtle. I got there 15 minutes late deliberately and spotted her immediately. Zoe had always been attractive in that Instagram model kind of way. All contour and filter-ready angles. Today, she looked like she'd spent hours getting ready for casual coffee. Designer everything. Hair and nails freshly done. Enough perfume to choke a horse. Ren, oh my god, you look amazing. She air-kissed both cheeks. This new job must be treating you well. It's all right, I said, downplaying everything. How's life? How's Lex? The slightest flinch. Interesting. Oh, she's fine. Things with Dex are progressing. The way she said progressing carried enough subtext to fill a novel. That's great, I lied. I'm happy for her. Zoe's eyes kept darting to my wrist, checking for expensive watches. My jacket, designer or not, and occasionally to the parking lot where my car was visible. Are you seeing anyone? She leaned forward, cleavage strategically positioned. A successful guy like you must have options. And that's when the pieces clicked together. Zoe wasn't here to catch up. She wasn't here to apologize. She was here to scope out if I'd become a viable option now that I had money and status. Which meant one thing. Things with Lex and Dex weren't so rosy after all. I smiled and took a sip of my coffee, mentally calculating just how far I was willing to take this. Because suddenly, a plan was forming. Actually, Zoe, I could use your insight on something. The game was about to get interesting. Turns out, Zoe was a goddamn goldmine of information. All it took was some strategic compliments, a few subtle hints about my investment portfolio, and suddenly she couldn't stop talking. Like, seriously couldn't stop. It was almost too easy. Between us, she whispered over her third free latte. I was keeping count. Things aren't great with Lex and Dex. No, I asked, trying to sound surprised while mentally high-fiving myself. I'd suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed was chef's kiss. Zoe leaned in so close I could count her individual eyelash extensions. The wife won't divorce him. Something about a prenup that would leave him basically broke. So he's stringing Lex along with promises. That must be hard for her, I said, practicing what I call my concerned but not too concerned face. Years of watching soccer refs make bad calls had prepared me well for faking appropriate reactions. She's managing. Zoe's smile had this predatory edge that reminded me of a shark circling chum. But honestly, I told her she jumped ship too soon. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Well, look at you now. She gestured vaguely at my entire existence. The designer watch I'd treated myself to. If she'd waited a few months, that's when I really understood. These women weren't just gold diggers. They were bad investors. Selling low, trying to buy high. They'd developed this whole system, with Zoe as the scout and Lex as the closer. Zoe would find potential targets, help Lex set the hook, then they'd both enjoy the benefits of Lex's relationships. Until something better came along, of course. Then they'd just move on to the next sucker. You know what's funny, Zoe? I swirled my coffee. I always thought you were the smarter one between you two. Her eyes lit up like I'd just handed her a winning lottery ticket. Flattery. It's like catnip for narcissists. I mean, you saw potential in me before she did, right? You were the one who coached her about soccer to help her land me. Zoe preened. Actually fucking preened. I've always been good at spotting opportunities. That's exactly what I need right now, I said, lowering my voice conspiratorially. Someone with your insight. So began what I can only describe as the weirdest reconnaissance operation of all time. Over the next few weeks, Zoe and I developed a friendship. Coffee dates became dinner dates. Dinner dates became drinks at my place. I was careful, always friendly, never crossing lines, but dropping enough hints to keep her interested. Every time we met, I'd leave some evidence of my success visible. Investment paperwork, accidentally left on the coffee table. Browser tabs showing luxury vacation destinations. A brochure for a yacht club. All props in an elaborate game of deception that honestly made me feel gross. But also, vindicated? And boy, did Zoe deliver the goods. First, I learned that Lex had moved into Dex's penthouse, but was relegated to the guest room whenever his wife made surprise visits, which was increasingly often. Apparently, Mrs. Dex, Tanya, I learned, wasn't as clueless as everyone thought. She'd hired a private investigator months ago and was building a case to void their prenup on grounds of infidelity. It's so humiliating for Lex, Zoe confided, clearly enjoying her friend's misfortune a little too much. She has to hide in the guest room like some dirty secret while Tanya makes a show of checking the master bathroom for forgotten items. Once she had to hide in a closet for 2 hours. Also, Dex had promised Lex a director position at the company, but it kept mysteriously being delayed. First it was next quarter, then after the board meeting, then once the restructuring settles. Meanwhile, she'd already told everyone in her social circle about her big promotion. She'd even ordered new business cards that she couldn't use. She's getting desperate, Zoe smirked. Maxed out 3 credit cards trying to keep up with Dex's lifestyle. Designer clothes, fancy restaurants, weekend trips, and the penthouse doesn't come cheap. He makes her pay her share of expenses. That didn't surprise me. Lex had always been image obsessed, even when we were together. What did surprise me was learning she'd borrowed money from Zoe to cover last month's expenses. She promised to pay me back after her promotion, Zoe said, rolling her eyes. I'm starting to think that's never happening. But the most valuable intel came when Zoe let slip about the event. Dex is hosting this huge charity gala next month, she said. Sounds fancy, I said, pretending to be only mildly interested. It's the social event of the season, Zoe emphasized. Dex is finally going to introduce Lex as his partner, professionally and personally. He's even telling his wife they're separating right before the gala. Sounds like a big deal, I said. It's her moment, Zoe confirmed. She's been planning for weeks. Bought a dress that cost more than my rent. This is her official entry into the world she's always wanted. I nodded thoughtfully. I'm happy for her. Are you, though? Zoe asked. After everything she did? I shrugged, going for nonchalant. Water under the bridge. We all move on, right? Zoe studied me for a moment, then tilted her head. You know, I could probably get you an invitation, as my +1. Bingo. Exactly what I'd been angling for. Wouldn't that be awkward? I asked, already knowing I'd accept. Please, Zoe waved dismissively. It would show how mature you are, how you've moved on to bigger and better things. She not so subtly glanced around my apartment, lingering on the 75-inch OLED TV and the framed vintage jersey that had cost me a small fortune. Besides, wouldn't it be satisfying to let her see exactly what she gave up? I pretended to consider it. I don't know. Trust me, Zoe said, touching my arm with perfectly manicured nails. It would be the perfect closure, for both of you. Closure. Right. That's totally what I was after. All right, I finally agreed. But I'm not dressing up as a footballer or anything. Those days are behind me. Zoe laughed like I'd said the funniest thing ever. Oh, Ren, you're so much more than soccer now. If only she knew how right she was. Called my soccer buddy Kai, who works IT at Lex's company, and asked if he could access company servers. He was hesitant when I explained I needed Lex's messages with Zoe. Dude, that's technically illegal. I admitted it was, but explained they'd manipulated me for years and were trying again. Told him my whole revenge plan. Fake friendship with Zoe, intel gathering, gala setup. Kai thought it was elaborate and questioned if it was worth it. Maybe just move on? I tried, I said. But Zoe came back hoping to use me again. They need consequences. He reluctantly agreed to help but warned, after this, we're done. Clean break. This revenge shit isn't good for you. I promised this would be the end. One final act of karmic justice. Operation Gold Digger is a terrible name, he added before hanging up. For the next few weeks, I played my role perfectly. The successful ex who had moved on completely. The potential new target for Zoe's schemes. I even started mentioning a fake trip I was planning. I've been thinking, I told Zoe over drinks at my place the day before the gala. After tomorrow night, maybe we could take a trip somewhere? Dubai, perhaps? Her eyes widened at the mention of Dubai, the same place where Lex had decided to leave me for Dex. Dubai? Really? Why not? I have some business contacts there I should connect with. We could make a vacation of it. Luxury hotels, desert safaris. I trailed off, letting her imagination run wild. I'd love that, she stammered. Great, I smiled. It's a plan then. After tomorrow's gala, we'll make arrangements. As she left that night, practically floating on air, I sent a quick text to Kai. Everything set for tomorrow? His response came back immediately. All systems go. Operation Gold Digger is ready to launch. I slept like a baby that night, dreaming of soccer victories and sweet, sweet karma. The venue for Dex's charity gala screamed, compensating for something. The kind of place where the bathroom attendant judges your watch while handing you a towel. I arrived fashionably late with Zoe on my arm. She'd gone full Hollywood, wearing a dress that probably required its own insurance policy. I kept it simple. Tailored black suit, crisp white shirt, the fake but convincing watch, and one secret accessory hidden in my jacket pocket. Ready to make an entrance? Zoe purred, clutching my arm like I was her winning lottery ticket. After you, I smiled. The moment we entered, I felt eyes turning. Zoe was well known in this circle, but me? I was the plot twist no one saw coming. It took approximately 3.7 seconds for Lex to spot us. She was across the room, clinging to Dex, a silver-haired dude trying way too hard to look younger than his 50-plus years. The look on her face was worth every second of planning. Pure shock, followed by confusion, followed by something that looked suspiciously like regret. We glided across the room, stopping to chat with people Zoe knew. She introduced me as her special friend, while dropping hints about my incredible success and exclusive investment opportunities. By the time we reached Lex and Dex, half the room was whispering about me. Lex! Dex exclamation mark Zoe air-kissed both of them. You remember Ren, of course. Lex looked like she'd seen a ghost. A very well-dressed, suddenly successful ghost. Ren, she managed. I didn't expect to see you here. Zoe was kind enough to invite me, I smiled, extending my hand to Dex. And I've heard so much about you, Dex. Your reputation precedes you. Dex gave me the once-over, clearly trying to determine if I was a threat or an opportunity. All good things, I hope? Oh, absolutely, I lied. Lex speaks very highly of your mentorship. Lex shot me a warning look, which I pretended not to notice. So, Dex asked, what line of work are you in these days? Perfect opening. I launched into my pre-prepared spiel about software development, consulting, and selective investments. Dropped just enough legitimate industry terms to sound credible, while being vague enough that nothing could be fact-checked on the spot. Actually, I added, I just closed a deal with Zetatech last week. Zetatech being the biggest competitor to Dex's company, a fact not lost on him, judging by his suddenly tight smile. Impressive, he muttered. If you'll excuse us, I need to make some introductions for Lex. As they walked away, I heard Lex hiss, You didn't tell me he was coming? I didn't know, Zoe whispered back. Throughout the evening, I worked the room like I was born to it, had meaningful conversations with actual important people, made Zoe feel like the belle of the ball, and most importantly, positioned myself near the stage where Dex would later make his big announcement. Around 10 p.m., Dex clinked his glass for attention. The room hushed as he took the microphone. Thank you all for coming tonight. This event isn't just about raising money for charity, though we've raised an incredible amount. Polite applause. It's also about new beginnings. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce someone very special. That was my cue. I slipped away from Zoe with a whispered bathroom excuse and positioned myself near the AV control booth where Kai had given me access earlier. As Dex continued his speech and called Lex to join him on stage, I pressed a button on my phone. The giant screen that was supposed to show the charity's logo suddenly switched to a different display, a grid of text messages, very specific text messages. From Lex to Zoe. God, I can't wait to ditch this soccer loser once Dex leaves his wife. From Zoe to Lex. Just keep pretending for a few more months. Once you're with Dex, you can hook me up with one of his rich friends. From Lex to Zoe. The idiot actually thinks I care about Liverpool. As if. Just need him to cover rent until Dex makes his move. From Zoe to Lex. His apartment is so sad. All those soccer posters. Like dating a teenager. On and on they went. 3 years of mockery, scheming, and gold digging, all meticulously curated for maximum impact. Conversations about upgrading from me to Dex. Discussions of Dex's wife and how to deal with her. Detailed plans about leveraging connections once Lex made it. And then the coup de grace. Conversations from the past month. From Zoe to Lex. Oh my god, he's loaded now. New job, amazing apartment, Audi. From Lex. Are you serious? After I left? That's so unfair. From Zoe. I'm getting close to him. Will report back. From Lex. Don't you dare try to steal him now that he's rich. From Zoe. Why not? You dropped him. Besides, he's taking me to Dubai next week. From Lex. You bitch! After everything I told you about Dubai with Dex. The gasps in the room were audible. Lex stood frozen on stage, mouth open in horror. Dex looked confused, then furious as he spotted his wife's name mentioned in several messages. Speaking of his wife, an elegant woman in the front row was now standing, face twisted with rage. Zoe was frantically looking for me, then staring at the screen in dawning comprehension and terror. I stood at the back, watching it all unfold. The beauty of my plan? I didn't have to say a word. They'd done all the work themselves. All those messages were real. Kai had just helped me access them from the company's servers where they'd been sending them during work hours for years. Chaos erupted. Dex's wife stormed the stage. Lex tried to flee but tripped on her expensive dress. Zoe attempted to explain herself to anyone who would listen, which was no one. I slipped out quietly during the mayhem, pausing only to hand the rental watch to the valet with a generous tip. Rough night? He asked, eyeing the commotion inside. Actually, I smiled. Best night I've had in years. The aftermath was spectacular. Dex's wife filed for divorce the next day. Turns out she'd suspected for years but needed proof. With the prenup voided by his infidelity, conveniently captured in those messages, she took him for everything. Lex was fired, obviously. Her reputation in the industry destroyed. Last I heard, she moved back to her hometown to work at her dad's insurance company. Zoe tried calling me 47 times that night. I blocked her number on the 48th attempt. She later sent a handwritten apology letter that I used to start my barbecue. As for me, I kept the job, the apartment, and the car. Started dating a woman who genuinely loves soccer. We met at a charity five-a-side tournament where I accidentally kicked the ball into her coffee. Turns out she was there scouting players for the youth team she coaches. She can name Liverpool's entire starting 11 from the 2005 Champions League final and gets more fired up about controversial VAR calls than I do. It's been different dating someone authentic. Mia doesn't pretend to like things to impress me. She'll straight up tell me when my match analyses are boring or when I'm being dramatic about a referee decision. We watch games together every weekend, and she's teaching me proper techniques since apparently I've been doing corner kicks wrong my whole life. The moral of the story? Don't pretend to love something you hate just to land someone. Don't ditch people right before their stock rises. And most importantly, don't mess with a guy who understands that soccer, like revenge, is all about patience, strategy, and knowing exactly when to strike. Game over, ladies. Game over.